Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. The title makes you want to laugh on so many levels. For one, it sounds like something a kid in elementary school would make up. Or you know in a bad sitcom when someone makes fun of how many sequels a scary movie has and just makes up their own title? Yeah, it sounds like something like that. Not to mention, how many films do you know of, with tons of sequels, that actually include the number in their titles? This is the only one I can think of where they actually call it Part 8. Most franchises are embarrassed at how many sequels they made, so they stop giving the films numbers and start giving them subtitles. But the Friday the 13th series had some balls. However, this would be the last film in the series until the 2009 remake that would actually bear the title Friday the 13th, so enjoy it while it lasts. Now you might be thinking, seriously, did they really take him to Manhattan? There's even a DVD boxed set containing the first 8 films, and it's called From Crystal Lake to Manhattan. Well, yeah, he does eventually get to the Big Apple, but the title is misleading, given that most of it takes place on a cruise ship. When the budget for the film started to escalate, costs had to be minimized, and so yeah, most of the slicing and dicing occurs on the boat, where a high school class takes their senior trip. I guess they got tired of using counselors and mental patients. And even when they get to New York, most of the scenes were actually shot in Vancouver. I think the only things they actually shot in New York were Liberty Island, a simple shot of the Statue of Liberty, and in Times Square, where apparently tons of people gathered to watch Jason stomping around. There's not much difference in the cast between Part 7 and Part 8. The protagonist, Rennie, is just a plain and timid girl who's watched over by an overprotective uncle. He also happens to be a chaperone on the trip. And like Tina in New Blood, Rennie has had a past run-in with Jason as a kid, when her uncle pushed her into Crystal Lake to try and teach her to swim. Now that's plain cruel. I wonder how he's going to get his. Oh, thank God. At least he gets what he deserves. You wouldn't think this would be any good. After all, the only thing they could really do after this would be to send him to outer space. But who would be dumb enough to do that? Oh, those rotten bastards. Actually, this is another one that fans tend to dismiss, but I have a soft spot for it. It was actually one of the ones I always caught on late night cable, along with parts 1 and 2, and I was always entertained by it. Yeah, most of it takes place on the ship, but it gives the film a claustrophobic feel. This is one of the only times when the kids honestly have no place to go. And it's a welcome change to the woods without changing the otherwise tired formula. The one thing I will say is that there really isn't a lot of graphic violence. They traded in really cool death sequences for a high body count. You can't even get an accurate body count because most of the senior class dies when the engine room catches on fire.
I left the others in the restaurant.
There is no more restaurant.
There's a crazy deckhand running around warning everyone that Jason's returned, so he's this film's crazy Ralph. He's not as amusing, and you're pretty glad when he gets knocked off. The other annoying thing is that for whatever reason, Jason has the ability to teleport at will. He does this several times in the film, and it gets old after a while. He's scary enough stalking after his prey, but when someone is desperately trying to escape and Jason randomly appears in front of them with no rhyme or reason, that's pretty cheap. The kids already don't have a prayer because they're stranded in the middle of the ocean, and now they're fighting a teleporting apparition who won't die. It's no longer scary, but ridiculous. Kane Hodder returns as Jason for the second time, and by now he really fits the part. He takes the best parts of all the past Jasons and owns it. However, in this one he looks more traditional, and doesn't have all the heavy prosthetics that made him look so grisly in Part 7. I have to admit, the best part of the film is when they get to New York. It may not seem like a lot of the film takes place there, but a lot of stuff happens. First, Rennie gets kidnapped by a couple of street hoods, forcing the survivors to split up and look for her. The kidnappers are about to inject her with drugs and rape her when Jason comes to her rescue. While escaping, Rennie reminisces about her past, her teacher dies in a car wreck, her uncle goes for a swim, and Julius goes boxing. This is one of the best scenes in the whole Friday the 13th series. Who would ever have the balls to box Jason Mike Tyson style?
Take your best shot. Motherfucker.
After all this takes place, the two survivors have to evade Jason all throughout New York City, so I would say that within the last half hour, the film lives up to its name. The one thing that never made sense was the ending, in which Jason gets trapped in the sewer tunnels by a lake of toxic waste and transforms back into a normal boy. For one, why is he normal? Wasn't Jason hideously deformed? And two, why would he change back to a little boy? Even if the filmmakers planned on this being the final film, it really doesn't give anything much closure. It just confuses the hell out of me. The film generally gets panned by critics and fans, although I can't see why. It maintains that familiar Jason stamp of approval, and even though it doesn't take place in Crystal Lake, it still feels like a Jason movie. I'm embarrassed to say it, but I put this one high up on my list. They tried something different, but still managed to make it a fun slasher flick, and that's what counts.
Crack don't get you, then the hookers will.
You're a dead meat, slime bag. Yo, man, it's cool. It's cool, man. It's cool.